For Global Business Update, Michael Wilson joins us now from London. Good morning, Michael.
Good morning. Good morning. So Asia really awaiting, as most of the markets are, quite honestly, waiting for the FOMC from the United States, their Monetary Policy Committee, their minutes later on. America is actually closed for President's Day today, so not a great deal of immediate news out of there. However, doesn't stop Goldman Sachs. They're looking at China. Their latest prediction is that stocks will be growing up about 24% in general in China. Really, they've moved from just thinking it will be reviving to actually reorganizing and really getting better as a financial country. And they expect a huge leap in the GDP of China when it finally sorts out its immediate problems and gets everybody back to work. So therefore, not an enormous amount of detail coming from the United States today, but generally speaking, because it's closed for President's Day, but generally speaking, officials are worrying about China again, and it's getting in the way of various trade deals which may be put forward. Trade tensions are still very much to the fore there between the two countries. Elon Musk is offering a cheaper Tesla. Now, if you remember when we were talking on Friday, there'd been a big 600,000 vehicle recall as far as Tesla was concerned, and also Renault saying that it wasn't going to compete on price, but now here he comes with what he says is going to be a cheaper Tesla, and they recall 360. Sorry, not 600,000. They recall 360,000 cars, and we're going to get the details of that on March the 1st. So the EU. Let's turn to the EU. Now, it's been suffering from a general and average lack of GDP growth, but not according to Ireland, which has grown 12.2% year on year. Ireland, particularly low corporate taxes, a lot of companies moving there, but not just that as well, a big pharma actually being produced in Ireland, so very much blowing the trumpet of itself within the EU. As far as Northern Ireland is concerned, the Prime Minister of Great Britain, Rishi Sunak, hopes to seal the Northern Ireland trade deal, get rid of the protocol, or at least talk through the protocol, having much more constructive talks. That's the kind of message that we're getting. We'll get details later in the week, but it does look as though the kind of detail that he's sitting down, very, very long meetings over the weekend with the Democratic Unionist Party, for one, which is very worried about this Northern Ireland protocol, i.e. this hard border between Northern Ireland and the island of Ireland. Ireland itself is in the EU. Northern Ireland is not at the moment because it's part of the UK. Very complicated. It needs to be sorted out. The battle for Manchester United is hotting up. US hedge fund Elliott. Now, they do not want outright ownership of Manchester United, but they're willing to help either Jim Ratcliffe or Sheikh Jassim bin Hamad Al Thani, which is the Qatari offer to bring about the deal. And a welcome bit of news for local investors in the UK. Anglo is apparently going to ramp up its activities as far as the Sirius mine is concerned in North Yorkshire. It's had a very, very difficult amount of money being thrown at it because nobody's quite sure whether it's going to work or not. But Anglo is this week going to ramp up production there. And finally, oil. Well, the oil price very much dependent, as we understand it, on China rejoining the world economy or not, as the case may be. As soon as it does that, demand will increase, the oil price will go up. That is the global view this morning.
All right, real quickly. A lot is happening on the foreign scene, and I'd like to talk, number one, will be about Europe's prospects with what is currently happening now. With the Russia-Ukraine war, the fact that Europe has paid so much in subsidies, and Europe doesn't have a rebate on those subsidies to be able to cushion the effect of oil and gas situations in Europe, and the fact that there's already a blowback on most economies in the Eurozone, vis-a-vis high numbers of inflation and rising costs, because Europe is not saying anything about that. They've kept that on the back burner.
Well, the European Central Bank have said something about that, as they were saying last week. I mean, the jury is really out as to how they're going to deal with those problems. You put your finger on it, as usual, quite correctly. There are lots of different economies there, different states of their development. That is the problem. That always has been the problem with the EU. But I think generally speaking that they are coping slightly better with the oil and gas shortages, sourcing it elsewhere, and so on. All that's going. I think the real question about Ukraine and Russia is how long can Russia actually keep up the sort of onslaught it wants to do, and what will the spring offensive be? These are questions which hang very much in the air, and it's not just a European war, of course. It's a war for the whole of the world, and I think Europe is quite keen to point that out. And I think once the UK has worked through this final detail on Brexit, I think relations between the UK and EU will improve. I'm very optimistic about that, because I think a slightly gentler touch is working with them.
All right, let's talk a bit more about this Northern Ireland Protocol. I know you mentioned that Rishi Sunak is optimistic that he's going to reach a deal, despite the fact that the largest union in Northern Ireland, DUP, isn't quite in support of the Northern Ireland Protocol. I'd like to get your view on the EU's stance on this, bearing in mind, obviously, the issues that they need to still iron out post-Brexit with the UK. And then, news around the fact that Meta is saying they're going to introduce subscription for blue ticks, just as Elon Musk did with Twitter. So on Facebook and on Instagram, individuals will be able to pay a subscription if they'd like to be verified, following some processes. But first, your take on the Northern Ireland Protocol, please.
No, it's incredibly complicated, and again, I think once it's been settled, it does appear as though more emollient language is actually working, and I think the EU is on board for this. They recognise that there is a problem. It may be that this is all about borders. This is all about trade and borders. That's the main kind of thing. Will there be a similar kind of green and red lane as you have at normal customs at airports and so on? I suspect there probably will. Again, the detail of it is actually being worked on right now, and we'll hear a little more of that when it's taken to Parliament. I believe it's either going to be Tuesday or Wednesday. I think it's probably going to be Wednesday, and then we'll have the detail then. As far as what was oh yes. Meta, and I think we're getting to a stage now where these big social media companies are beginning to realise that they will have to charge. Advertising is not enough, and if you want that particular kind of service from Meta, then you'll have to pay for it. I think it's as simple as that. It's the way that they're evolving at the moment, and this isn't to say that, of course, they won't come under scrutiny from regulators as well. So things are firming up as far as social media is concerned, certainly.
Well, the big issue with the Northern Ireland Protocol and the post-Brexit negotiations, which went on yesterday between EU officials and UK officials, is whether Prime Minister Sunak will be able to call the bluff of the Democratic Unionist Party, that is considered very critical to this, and also the Conservative right. He was supposed to announce the plans today and present to Parliament tomorrow, but that has been delayed. Will he call their bluff and go ahead with the deal? That's what I want your opinion on. And then the Chinese Securities Regulatory Commission has now formalized the rules for companies that want to issue IPOs offshore with regard to national security laws and also personal privacy data. Now, given the increased, enhanced trade tension between the US and China right now, the evidence of which we still saw at the Munich Security Conference over the weekend, what effect do you think this is going to have? Will it make it easier for Chinese companies to list in the US, particularly as the Biden government is taking a second look at some of those impositions by the Trump administration, even to be more harsh?
I think that once people know where they stand, and that's been the difficulty with China. Once the details are worked out, whatever they may be, I don't think it make life any easier or harder. Quite honestly, it's knowing what the regulations are and knowing what companies need to do if they want to either have Chinese companies having IPOs abroad or companies wishing to be quoted as far as China is concerned. So I think that once there is a bit of clarity about that, it'll probably help, but it will take a long time. As far as calling bluff is concerned, and the DUP in Northern Ireland, I don't think he's been calling any bluff. And I'm not necessarily a supporter of Prime Minister Sunak. I'm just saying that what I've read is that he's actually sat down with them and they ironed out a lot of the granular detail. And I don't think that's a bad thing. There are certainly a lot of concerns about whether or not this helps the unionist cause or not, and whether it helps companies, for example, exporting from the UK mainland to Northern Ireland, whether they will have to go through customs checks as well. So basically what he's talking about is easing trade. I think when those details come out, the markets will have their own view about it. But until we actually see the detail of that, I can't really comment on it. But all I can say is that the mood music coming out of Northern Ireland, and especially from the DUP, has been constructive. And that's as far as it goes. It's a very, very thorny problem indeed.
Well, I hope the attack by Boris Johnson and Liz Truss has also been very constructive in this regard. But thank you very much, Michael. Now for business updates across the African continent, Rotus Odiri joins us. Good morning, Rotus.
Good morning, Doctor. Good morning, Ayo. Good morning,
Rotus.
So look, the cashless conversation around Nigeria continues. Interesting update over with weddings now. It looks like the whole Owambe movements are going digital. Saw a video of a particular wedding where I think it's monopoly money, is being used to be sprayed at weddings. So essentially, all right, let me start that again. So the cashless drive is hitting weddings in Nigeria. So what we're seeing is that essentially, because you're not able to spray money, which is of course against the law, and we've seen that there are actually no notes to be sprayed anyway, people are giving, or rather making transfers to these operators at these particular ones, and then they printed out their own notes, so you get to spray those notes in exchange for the cash that the transfer that's been made. This seems to be some kind of cultural thing. If you look at India, I think we shared this video before. In India, there was a wedding that took place where they were using QR codes to digitally spray. You can see this gentleman waving his phone over the couple's head. There was a video like this in Nigeria. I couldn't find. I saw it on Twitter briefly from like 2021, where they pasted a QR code on a piece of wood, and people would scan the code, transfer money there, and then the other parts are where they would do this, and then move the phone, just wave the phones over their heads. But actually, and this is essentially going digital. That's what this is about. And so with this whole cashless thing, and with what's coming up with the Supreme Court and everything else, we're seeing businesses actually move there. I saw something interesting here. This was at a business center here in Lagos. So these guys are saying CBN online registration for old Naira, come here, we'll help you. What they're doing is they're helping people to fill the form online that will allow them to take whatever cash they have, that reference form, over to the central bank. Now, if you look at the rules again, the guidelines, you can't do this for a third party. You must do it for yourself. That is, third party deposits are not allowed, meaning that the information of the person that is filled on that form is the same individual that goes to the central bank deposit center to put the cash in there. So these very savvy, the Lagos business owners, they're hustlers, man. They're just really, really sharp folks. So they're offering a service where if you don't have access or for some reason can't fill it out, they will fill it out for you. You pay them, and then you now take that reference code to the central bank and then replace your cash. Now, the deadline though was the 17th, and when I saw that, I pointed this out to them. They said, well, they're still going to be helping people that need help. But I think the deadline has passed as far as the 17th is concerned. A couple tweets. Again, it's all cashless. This gentleman here says got to the market, and to his surprise, a guy who usually sells Maggi has got the new POS for his business. Saw a lady that sells crayfish, stockfish, also getting one too. We're getting there. This second tweet is a bit over the top, but I mean, it says the infamously famous informal economy has moved on, adapting fully. Well done to President Buhari and Gordon Emefiele. It's still a gradual process, but what is being seen is that in order to fall in line with where we're moving to, you are seeing more of these folks in the informal economy getting POS machines. And what does that mean? If all of them are getting POS machines, then that means they can get formalized, because now there's a trace. That is what electronic transactions, POS transactions, mobile transactions are all about. You can trace them. So now probably start paying taxes for the crayfish seller, the Maggi seller, and so on and so forth. Very interesting development in Ogun State. Some old notes popped up. Not sure if you saw this. Were being distributed with the governor's face on the envelopes. I think they were speaking in Yoruba, but take a listen. Take a listen.
wọ́n máa gbà lọ́wọ́ yìí kì í ṣe new money old money wọ́n máa gbà lọ́wọ́ yìí ẹ máa ná so ó máa gbà lọ́wọ́ yìí ẹ dúró ó ti sọ ẹ dúró ó ti promising pé ó máa gbà á the government is coming back any mistake we are coming back so what do you say to the government for this what do you say. ìyẹn ní kọ́kọ́ máa gbà lọ́wọ́ yìí kí lè fẹ́ sọ fún gómìnà pé ó ṣe báyìí àmì Èdùmàrè.
Now, interesting enough, Governor Dapo Abiodun over the weekend put out a statement appealing to the president to allow for old notes to be used. Right. So the timing is incredible. If you go on his Twitter page, the governor, you will see a full statement with him saying allow the notes, and then you have those notes being distributed with his name, with his face on the on the envelope. South Africa, the Financial Action Task Force, which is a global body that reviews illicit financial flows. They're having sessions this week, starting today up until the 24th. Now, there is fear that South Africa will be grey listed, and what that means, this is Intelligex saying sword of Damocles, South Africa's FATF grey listing risk. If you get grey listed, that means that you are not doing well to curb illicit fund flows in your country, as if South Africa doesn't already have enough problems already from ESCOM and corruption charges and all these other things. So if the FATF decides to grey list it. Now, will the markets move? It's been suggested that the markets are already going to price this in, that yes, we know we've got corruption issues and we know that we're having trouble stopping illicit fund flows in South Africa. So that decision, we expect that on the 24th, I believe, when that meeting is concluded. Finally, insurance in Kenya, Insurance Regulatory Authority in Kenya is looking to, I found this incredible, they are setting up an online portal in order to allow for customer complaints to be lodged. Apparently it was done manually, and if you take a look at the number of complaints that have increased over in Kenya as far as insurance, I think, what is that now, with 1,686 from 1,637 2021 to 2020 to 2021, the biggest complaint is delayed payments for insurance settlements and then declined claims. We keep talking about insurance penetration in Africa. Kenya has, I believe, the third lowest at 3%. South Africa is the highest at 17%. So who knows, if they get their online portal and digitize the way complaints can be attended to as quickly as possible, maybe we see an improvement there.
I mean this is a very good innovation.
Do you have time?
Kenya.
Yeah, hopefully.
I thought the director says we don't have time.
Oh, okay.
Thank you, Rotus.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.